She died in my dream. At exactly 4 a.m., Dmitry woke up screaming. He sat bolt upright, breath ragged, chest heaving. His hands were clamped over his stomach, as if holding something in, something wet, something warm. It wasn't real, but it had felt real. The dream clung to his body like cold sweat. And the worst part? He hadn't been himself. Not completely. The dream had started in a bathroom. Dim lighting, strange tile. He didn't recognize the place, but it felt significant. Like he had been there before in another life. Then he looked in the mirror. Except it wasn't his reflection staring back. It was a woman. She was around 30. Long chestnut hair tied in a ponytail. A light blue shirt, now soaked in red. Blood streamed from a deep gash in her abdomen, and her face, once vibrant, was turning pale, drained of life. Dmitry could see her lips move. She tried to scream, but coughed instead, a mist of red spattering the mirror. Then, silence. Her knees buckled. Her body crumpled to the floor, headfirst cracking against the tub. And as she collapsed, her dead eyes locked onto the mirror again. Locked onto him. That's when he woke up, drenched in sweat, heart thundering like a war drum. He sat in silence for a long time, staring into the dark ceiling. Was it just a nightmare? It hadn't felt like one. It had felt like a memory. Or a warning. By noon, Dmitry had almost convinced himself it meant nothing. That's how he survived. Detachment, logic, distance. It was ironic. Everyone in Moscow knew him as the psychic. People came to him for seances, curse removals, and desperate final words from the dead. They called his office the edge between worlds. But behind closed doors, he was just a man with a psychology degree and a few high-level hackers on payroll. No ghosts, no magic, no spirits. Just human pain and his ability to manipulate it. He and his assistant Katya built the whole business around one thing: intel. Every client who booked a session gave a name, a face, a story. That was enough for Katya to dig deep photos, messages, locations. Dmitry would read their grief back to them, dressed as a revelation. And it worked. Every time. That day's first client was no different, a grieving mother who wanted to speak to her dead child. Dmitry lit some candles, dimmed the lights, and gave her peace for a price. When she left, Katya watched her go, then turned to Dmitry. "You ever sleep well after this kind of thing?" Dmitry smirked. "I sleep like a king." But he didn't, because she was still in his head. The woman from the mirror, dying, bleeding, looking right at him. He had never seen her before. Not online, not in the client files, not anywhere. So why did it feel like he knew her? And why did it feel like he was the only one who could save her? The woman from the dream. Dmitry was sipping his coffee when she passed the office window. He froze. Same chestnut hair and a loose ponytail, same face, same walk. It was her, the woman from the dream. Alive, breathing, completely unaware. She had already died in his mind. He pushed the door open and stepped out. "Hey!" he called. She turned, surprised but not frightened. Her soft blue eyes locked onto his. "You okay?" she asked. Dmitry paused. "You seem familiar." She smiled. "I don't think we've met." "Maybe I saw you around," he said quickly. "Sorry, Dmitry. Katerina," she replied. The name hit him like static. He motioned toward the glass sign above his door, the edge between worlds. "You work here?" she asked. "I do. You're the psychic?" "Something like that." She smiled again, warm, amused. "Maybe I'll stop by." And then she walked away. Inside, Dmitry stood still for a long moment. Katya looked up from her screen. "You okay?" "I just saw her." Katya frowned. "Who?" "The woman from the dream. It's her." "Wait, what?" "Same face, same voice, same name, Katerina." Katya's fingers froze. "You're serious?" Dmitry nodded slowly. "She's real, and I think something bad is going to happen." That night, he barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, the image returned: the mirror, the blood, the sound of her head hitting porcelain, and her eyes looking right through him. But now he knew. It wasn't just a dream. It was a countdown. The next day, a client was due at noon. Dmitry was reviewing her file when the bell over the door chimed. He looked up and froze again. Katerina stood in the doorway. "Hi," she said nervously. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I was nearby." "I thought maybe you could help." He motioned to the chair. "Of course. Sit." She did, folding her hands in her lap. "I think I'm cursed," she said. 2 long-term relationships. One lasted 8 years, the other 3. And neither man ever talked about marriage. Nothing serious. It's like something pushes them away. She hesitated. "I think I have that thing. Venez bezbrachia?" Her voice cracked a little. She didn't believe in magic. She believed something was wrong with her. "There's no curse," Dmitry said gently. "You're not broken. You're just expecting people to change who never will." She looked up, eyes glistening. "Then what should I do?" "Say what you want. If he walks, he wasn't meant to stay." She smiled, fragile, grateful. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're the first one to say that." When she left, Dmitry walked to the window. A man waited outside. Tall, muscular, shaved head. He kissed her on the cheek, wrapping his arm around her waist. Then Dmitry saw it, a tattoo on the man's neck, the same one from the dream. The mark. Dmitry stared through the glass, heart pounding. The man outside held Katerina close. His shaved head, thick build, heavy stare all matched what Dmitry remembered. But it was the tattoo that sealed it. Black ink. Right side of the neck. Twisting lines like a claw. He'd seen it before. In the dream. The moment before Katerina collapsed in that blood-slicked bathroom. That same mark had flashed in the mirror. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a warning. That night, Dmitry couldn't sit still. His mind replayed every second of the dream, except now it felt more like surveillance footage from a future that hadn't happened yet. Not just a vision. A countdown. Katerina was going to die. And he was the only one who knew it. But what was he supposed to do? Call her? Say what, "I dreamed your boyfriend is going to murder you"? She'd block his number before he finished the sentence. No. He needed proof. The next morning, Dmitry got to the office early and sat at his desk, staring at the screen. Katya walked in 20 minutes later with coffee and a confused look. "You okay?" "I need a favor." She raised an eyebrow. "I need you to find her," he said. "Katerina, I want to know where she lives." Katya didn't move. "You serious?" "Yes." "Boss, that's not just illegal. It's creepy." "I think her life's in danger." Katya hesitated. "I saw the guy from the dream. He's real. He was with her." That made her stop. "You think he's going to hurt her?" "I don't know. But I can't ignore this." Katya exhaled through her nose. "You want me to dig?" "I want to protect her." By noon, Katya slid a note across the desk. "Name, building, district," she said quietly. "No apartment number." "But this place," she tapped the page, "has a bar in the lobby. She posted about it last week." Dmitry nodded and stood. "You're going now?" Katya asked. He nodded. "I won't let this happen." It took him nearly 2 hours to get across the city. Traffic was brutal, and the metro was packed. He arrived at the residential block at 11:45 a.m., tall, modern, sleek balconies and glass walls. He circled the building twice before spotting the window, the one from his dream. 3rd floor. Blue floral curtains. His stomach turned. It's today, he thought. It's going to happen today. He made his way into the lobby just as someone exited the building. Dmitry slipped in, heart racing. He took the stairs. Every step felt like a countdown. At the 3rd floor, he stopped in front of the door. Apartment 312. He stared at it. No screams, no blood. Yet, he pulled out his phone and texted Katya. "If I don't respond in 15 minutes, call the cops. This is the address." Then he slid the phone into his pocket, took a breath, and reached for the doorbell. From inside came a muffled shout, a man's voice, sharp, angry. Dmitry froze. It had already started. Inside the apartment, Dmitry stood still outside the door, from inside yelling, a man's voice sharp and getting louder. Without thinking, he pressed the doorbell. Twice. Silence. Then footsteps. The lock clicked. The door opened halfway. A broad, shirtless man appeared, tattoo on his neck. The same one. The same man from the dream. He eyed Dmitry up and down. "Who the hell are you?" "I live downstairs," Dmitry lied quickly. Heard yelling. The man narrowed his eyes. "I've seen you before," he said slowly. "You were talking to her." From behind him, Katerina's voice. "Dmitry! Get back!" the man snapped. "I just want to talk," Dmitry said. "I'm not here to cause." "You came here for her?" the man barked. "Seriously?" Katerina moved into view. "What's going on?" "You think I'm stupid?" the man roared. "You cheating on me? With him?" He turned toward the kitchen. His hand grabbed something. A flash of silver. A knife. Dmitry reached into his pocket, yanked out the pepper spray, and sprayed blindly. But the man ducked low and charged. A sudden jolt, a flash of burning pain. The knife pierced his side. Dmitry stumbled back, hit the wall, and dropped to the floor. Doors opened down the hall. Voices shouted. The attacker cursed, grabbed his jacket, and bolted down the stairs. Everything blurred. Katerina screamed. The last thing Dmitry saw was her silhouette in the hallway, and then darkness. He woke in a white room. White ceiling, white sheets, a slow beeping behind his head. Pain radiated through his ribs. A shadow leaned in. "Boss?" Katya's voice. "You're alive," she whispered. "I thought they said you might not wake up." Dmitry swallowed, grimaced. "Katerina?" "She's okay," Katya said. "In this hospital, 1 floor below, still unconscious." Relief crashed through him. "They caught the guy," she added. "Tried to flee the city. Almost made it to the border. Cameras picked him up. He's in custody." Dmitry exhaled, closed his eyes. "You saved her," Katya said. He tried to smile. Couldn't. That night, alone in his hospital room, Dmitry stared at the ceiling. He didn't know where the dream came from, but he knew what it had been. A warning. And somehow, against every logical part of him, he listened. 1 week later, the hospital room was quiet. No monitors, no IVs. Just sunlight filtering through pale curtains and the ticking of a clock. Dmitry sat upright in bed, still sore but stronger. A week had passed since the stabbing, since the dream became reality. Katya entered without knocking, holding a small bag and a familiar file folder. "You're being discharged tomorrow," she said. "I brought clothes. And your laptop." He took the folder from her hands. Inside, a police report, witness statements, medical summaries. He barely glanced at it. "I don't care about paperwork," he murmured. "I care about her. She's okay," Katya said gently. "Still recovering. But she asked about you." Dmitry looked up. "She remembers?" Katya nodded. "Not everything, but enough." That afternoon, they wheeled him into the courtyard for fresh air. He sat alone under a birch tree, listening to the wind stir the leaves. He thought about the moment he saw Katerina walk past his window. How unreal it felt. How certain he had been that something was wrong, that she was going to die. And how, against logic and everything he claimed to believe in, he had trusted a dream. He was halfway through that thought when a nurse approached, pushing another wheelchair. Katerina. She looked tired, paler than before, but alive. Her hair was tied back, her eyes still sharp, still full of quiet grace. Their eyes met. For a few moments, neither spoke. Then she smiled. "You again." "You look better," Dmitry said. "So do you," she replied. "Sort of." They both laughed softly. She leaned back in her chair. "I've been thinking about what happened." He waited. "I still don't understand any of it," she said. "The dream you had, the way you showed up, the way everything played out. He said nothing. "I don't believe in fate," she continued. "But I also don't believe in coincidences anymore." Dmitry finally spoke. "Me neither." Another pause. Then she reached out, took his hand gently. "Thank you." He looked at her hand, then at her. "I didn't save you," he said. "You did more than enough," she whispered. Later that evening, back in his room, Dmitry stared at the ceiling. The pain was dull now, bearable, almost gone, but something else lingered. Something he couldn't name. Not guilt, not fear, not pride either. Just weight. The weight of knowing that for the first time in his life, what he saw had been real. And if it happened once, it could happen again.